don't really know how to start this because I've never spoken to anyone about it, but I'll try my best to explain it. A few years ago, when I was with my now ex-girlfriend, we were in bed. She was sleeping, and I was awake, but drifting off to sleep. It was about 1:30 in the morning, and her room went cold. I mean, freezing. Doors and windows were shut, so I knew it wasn't a draft or wind. I didn't think anything of it, because I've never experienced or read about paranormal events. My girlfriend woke up sweating and crying about 2 minutes later, saying there's a woman in the corner, and she was really scared. I thought she was joking at first, maybe a bad dream, so I comforted her and said, "It's okay, don't worry." But I was freaked out. The next thing that happened is a reason I've never told anyone because 1, I know people won't believe me, and 2, it still freaks me out just thinking about it. We were under the cover for some comfort, I guess, so she couldn't see around the room, when suddenly something or someone grabbed her by the ankle and dragged her down to the bottom of the bed. I literally had to grab her and pull her back up with all my strength, almost like tug of war. Scariest thing that's ever happened to me by far. My girlfriend started screaming when she looked at me and said my eyes were completely black. No pupils, no white parts, just all black, like I was possessed, but I felt fine. I was myself. So, I got the flashlight on my phone and looked around the room, and then jumped out of bed and turned on the lights. Nothing was in the room. To this day, I can't get my head to understand what or who that was.
From a very early age, I have had weird things happen that I cannot really explain. This story is about a house we lived in 1986 in Southeast Texas. It's absolutely 100% true. I was 6 years old. The address was Dyer Avenue. The thing I remember most about living here is the little girl. I do not know her name. All I know is she was always there. For years, I thought she was one of my parents' friends' kids who my mother babysat or was always visiting, but she was always looking for her father. I remember her waking me up many nights to ask me when her dad was coming back. My parents usually had company, and I would get in trouble for sneaking out of bed at night to get a peek at who was over, so I would always stay in my room. The little girl was always asking about her father and when he would return for her. She often looked ill, with dark rings around her eyes and pale skin. She had long blonde hair to about the middle of her back with bangs, just like me. She wore a gray and white polka-dotted dress with a gray and white striped apron. Her shoes resembled what I would call pilgrim shoes with a big shiny buckle. Her socks were folded down and had lace around them at the ankle. For years, I thought this little girl was a part of my childhood. When I asked my mother and father about what happened to her, they said they did not know what I was talking about. When I described her and her clothing, my parents turned white as a ghost and said, "You saw her too?" My mom and dad said they would pass by my bedroom and see what they thought was me sitting in front of the toy box in my room, playing. But then they'd pass by the kitchen window and see my sister and I playing in the backyard. When they would go back to my room to see who was playing at the toy box, toys would be strewn about, but nobody would be there. These are memories that not only I have, but my mother and father as well. My sister was too young to remember the house or anything about it. Strange things happened there. Something would lock the dog up in the laundry room. The door had a latch that latched from the inside, but the dog was constantly getting locked in the room and barking and wailing like he was being beaten. The dog barked at certain spots in the house and was always on edge and growling and gnashing his teeth at something we could not see. There were sounds from the attic like stomping and banging. Sometimes sounded like something being dragged across the floor above our heads. My dad would go up there in the middle of the night trying to find out what was causing the noises. Nothing ever found, not so much as a raccoon or squirrel. Something blacked both of my dad's eyes one night when all the power went out. He accused my mom of punching him in the face in the dark, but she says he was trying to drown her in the bathtub during the power outage. Neither were near each other at the time. They were both attacked in the darkness on opposite ends of the house. Their bedroom caught on fire 4 times in the year we lived there. This is the very first paranormal experience I have ever had that I can remember. I have had many more throughout my life, but I will never forget the little girl that eternally lives at my childhood home. I think about her often and I wonder if she ever found her father.
So, I have for most of my life had experiences with the paranormal or spirits, as you will. I've had several things happen to me as I've grown up and even as an adult. And my own children have had experiences, but one in particular stands out above the rest. It was truly terrifying, and I still don't sleep very well because of it. At the time, I was a young mother in my early 20s, living alone with my 3 children, who were then the ages of 6, 5, and 3. My daughter being the youngest, and my 2 boys, 6 and 5. We were all asleep, except for something I'm still unclear of today, woke up my eldest son. I heard him say in a very chilling and low voice, "Mommy, Mommy," trying to get my attention. I awoke and sat up to look down at him. He was on a mattress on the floor with my other 2 children. I asked him, "What? What's wrong?" He said, "Mommy, there's a scary lady standing next to you, just looking at you." This instantly made me frantically search around the room, and I kind of yelled at this moment, "What? What lady? I don't see anything!" My youngest daughter had woken up from the commotion by then, and said nothing but pointed in the direction my son was looking in. I started to feel every hair in my body stand up at this moment, while he then said something I'll never forget. "This scary lady comes almost every night and stands in front of our beds and just stares and smiles at us while we sleep. She's even told me she wants to take me home with her." I was paralyzed with fear, and my light switch was all the way across the room, so I didn't even want to move. I desperately scanned the room in an attempt to see what he was talking about. My middle child at the time then wakes when my daughter starts to cry, and while still looking in the direction my son was, she says, "Who are you?" I then literally panicked, but still felt frozen with fear, trying to see what all 3 of my children were seeing. My eldest then darted for the light switch, while my 2 other children screamed loudly, "Mommy! Mommy!" Then, the light switched on. They all continued to cry, but I quickly searched around the room, stating that the scary lady was gone. When I asked why they screamed and what they saw, my eldest proceeded to tell me that the scary lady dressed in a long white dress, old and tattered with a scratched up face and long curly blonde hair with dark black eyes, was starting to walk towards them with a slight grin and terrifying stare, and said she was taking them home. I, at that moment, didn't want to turn off the lights. All 3 of them in unison proceeded to explain to me what this lady was doing, what she looked like, and even what she was saying. Apparently, I was a threat to her and had in her mind taking her children, and she was angry with me for that and wished me dead. She wanted my children for herself. My children saw her numerous times, always just standing next to my bed looking down at me with hate and anger as I slept. I couldn't sleep with the lights off for a very long time after this first occurrence, and after the second and third, we all agreed we would feel better with the lights on permanently. Needless to say, I tried to deal with this unsettling experience as long as I could bear, as I tried to save enough money to move. I'm happy to say she did not follow us. Since then, my children still can't sleep unless the light is on. They all said the scary lady will forever haunt them. I hope that's not true, but that's my story from this scary moment in my life. Ghosts are very real, and even though we may not be able to see them, they exist and can see us. I'm forever changed because of this experience.
From the outside, it seems to be an average nondescript house, the kind of place that you'd likely find in any city or small town. It's not, though. This house is like something out of the Twilight Zone or a Stephen King novel. You see, I lived in this house when I was 11 to 12 years old. That was 1993 to 94. My room was the one above the porch with a double window. My sister's room was across the hall. My mother and my brothers lived downstairs. During the time we lived there, strange things occurred. Some of them you may find hard to believe, and that's fine. I can only assure you that they actually happened. Some 26 years after the fact, I can provide you no evidence, and only my solemn word that everything I'm about to tell you is the absolute truth. For starters, sometimes our clocks would run backwards for no discernible reason. We changed the batteries and checked them for defects, but nothing seemed to be amiss. They just randomly started running in reverse from time to time. There was also an issue with our basement. How do I describe this? I guess the best way would be to say that the basement seemed to be a portal to hell. We would hear strange noises coming from down there that couldn't be explained away as creaking pipes or the house settling on the foundation. Things like demonic growling, roaring. When someone had to go down there to do laundry, there was a sound like people whispering, and the whole area had an unsettling feel to it. We had this dog, a German Shepherd named Lassie. She was an exceptionally brave, loyal, and protective dog, but she would not go near the basement or the basement door. Eventually, she became so terrified that she ran away and never came back. There was also a night when we all woke up to find a big black crow, or raven, I'm not sure, in the house, flying madly around. This was in the ungodly hours of the morning, mind you, so no one would have been up to open a door or window to let it in. If you can even imagine an intelligent bird like a raven willingly flying through an opening into a human dwelling like some kind of idiotic sparrow. There were no holes in the roof and no place for it to get in or out. Where did it come from and where did it go? I have no memory of us actually getting the bird out of the house, but I never saw it again. Then there was the man. At the back of the house was a hallway that led off the dining room and past the kitchen towards the lower floor bedrooms. The twins, mere toddlers at the time, had their nursery in the rearmost room on the left. They would sit back there and have conversations with someone that none of us could see. They referred to this person as simply the man. The man seemed to enjoy keeping the boys company, but he was anything but benign. One day while the rest of us were at school, my mom had the twins in their high chairs, feeding them lunch. When she stepped away to do something, I don't remember exactly what, there was a crash and the sound of screaming. One of the twins was on the floor. His high chair tipped over. He'd bashed his head really hard. The high chairs had been secured on flat footing before she started. When she asked the other twin what happened, he replied, "The man did it." My little brother ended up in the hospital in a coma for a long time. You might be happy to know that he survived and today is married with 2 beautiful daughters. But CPS didn't believe that my mother was innocent and began to stalk us. They would park across the street from our house and watch us. They would drop in unexpectedly. They were looking for a reason to take us and put us in foster care. This is how we ultimately ended up leaving the house. Rather than deal with any more tragedy or weirdness or stalking, we packed up what we could and moved across the country. What we couldn't take with us, we left behind. I asked my mother once, about 5 years before she died, if she'd ever actually seen the entity that the boys referred to as the man. She said she had, but only once. She said she was walking past the kitchen door one day and had caught sight of someone in her peripheral vision. A tall man wearing dark clothes, standing with his back to her, staring out of the kitchen window. When she turned to get a better look, he was gone. That house scared the crap out of all of us. There was always a feeling like we were being watched. Thankfully, it is many years and many miles behind us. When we left, there was no one to pay the mortgage, so the bank took possession. Because of this, today it is privately owned by people I don't know. For that reason, I will not disclose the location. I won't even tell you what state it's in. If you're ever unfortunate enough to stumble upon it, however, I advise you to keep walking. Don't stop to look, because if you stop to take a look at this place, there's likely something you can't see staring back at you.